Hello, everyone. My name is Pete, and this is Swift Tips podcast. In today's episode, we have an amazing guest who wears many hats. He is YouTuber, he is indie developer, and he is also a PhD researcher in a prestigious university in Europe. And I have to say it, this person has helped me a lot in my YouTube career. We are talking about Florian Schreitzer. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing his German last name correctly. Sorry, man. But he's better known as Flow or Flow Write Codes on internet. Today, I have a conversation with Flo about how is his career on YouTube, how he has participated in iOS conferences in Europe, because I'm seeing that there's a lot of community there. I'm curious why there's so many devs there and how they are involved in each other. Of course, the main topic here will be his indie app for indie developers called LaunchBuddy. We will talk more about it, and also the challenges of creating a multi-platform application in SwiftUI. Apple is selling that just one code base in SwiftUI will fulfill all the environment, all the operating systems. We will see if that's straightforward or, in fact, there are caveats that you need to know. Well, enjoy the video. Hey, Flo, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey Fit, thanks for having me. I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you. I'm really excited because I know you from social media from
Mhm.
time ago, but it's the first time when we talk each other, unless in virtual life. So you know,
Yeah, it's the first time we talk in via video. I guess we've talked a lot about or a lot on Twitter, I would say. And what's the first thing that we talked about? The collaboration video that I did 2 years ago or something. Were you part of that? I think
oh
you were,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I remember. I'm not fully remember the topic. What was that?
I think it was. I think
Tips?
I asked, yeah, different like Swift and iOS development tips, and I got a few
Oh,
people from the
okay,
community and got a tip
okay,
from everyone. And I think you were part of that too. And I think that was one of the
yeah,
first times that we actually talked on Twitter.
yeah, yeah,
Such a long
yeah.
time ago.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I actually need to rewatch the video. I don't remember what I said. Maybe I said a lot of things that I could not say now, but yeah,
I
yeah,
think that
that's good
you,
memory.
I think that you didn't have a technical tip. I think you had like a motivation,
Oh
keep on learning kind of thing. But I
yeah,
also don't. It's been 2 years. I don't. I don't remember
yeah.
anymore.
Wow, time flies, man. I think I recorded that when I was in Mexico. So yeah,
Oh,
that
really?
brought me a lot of memories. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. I thought that was after you moved, but wow, then it's been
no,
quite a long time ago.
no, I actually was about to move to US, and it was like a lot of background noise because my all my stuff was packing out.
Mhm.
So yeah, oh man, a lot of things have happened in 2 years. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But
yeah,
so nice to finally
yeah.
talk to you on video.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was talking to you offline, so I don't want to say that what it is, but probably you will be the last guest in my in the podcast episode. So yeah, it's a great honor to having you here, man. So yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for accepting.
Pleasure's on my side.
Yeah. So, Flo, I know there are people that know you already because you have a YouTube channel. We'll talk about it. So, but one of the things that I like to ask to all the guests in Swift and Tip podcast is how do you start with iOS? Because, it's technically not too obvious for many reasons for people jumping to iOS because, budget things or other things. But tell us, what you did for staying here in this awesome framework technologies and ecosystem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. Funnily enough, in my entire life, I gave one single conference talk, and it was on the topic of how I started iOS development, and how I
Okay.
would convince other people to keep on learning and to have fun with iOS stuff. And that was actually at Swift Leads 2 years ago, I would say. Yeah, I think it was
Mm,
2022.
okay.
And so it's quite a long journey and quite a long story, actually. It wasn't too straightforward. So ever since, I would say, first grade, I absolutely loved maths. So I was one of the very few kids
Okay.
who loved maths. And of course,
Nice.
in the first few grades, you don't have any computer science classes or anything. And also just to pick everyone up. So I'm from Germany, and I did a German education system, and I always loved maths. And then I came to I think in fifth grade, there was a voluntary course in my school that was about website design. So I thought, well,
Okay.
let's take that course. I mean, I love everything going on with tech. I had my 30 minutes of laptop time every day, and
Okay.
it probably was more towards an hour or an hour and a half. And I always loved it, so I decided to join that course. It was a voluntary course, so I made that choice myself. And I thought, yeah, so I'm going to take this course and then I'm going to be in fifth grade learning how to program and how to make all of these websites and blah, blah, blah. And
Mhm.
after just a few times, it actually turned out they were just using a content management system. And we just learned
Cool.
how to update the headings and the images and so on of the school website. So that
Okay.
was my first programming experience. And
Okay. Not too
but then
bad,
after,
to be honest.
not too bad, and it was good to get started, right?
Yeah.
We didn't get thrown right into code, but we understood how the web works and how you create pages and so on.
Mhm.
But then after a few months, we actually started to learn HTML and CSS,
Mhm.
and I had a very nice teacher. I actually liked him a lot, and he always used. That's the one thing I always remember about him. He used to have this binder, this physical binder of printed out pages and commands and HTML tags and
Okay.
CSS stuff and so on. And he would also always go through this binder and then select a page and then tell us about, I don't know, some CSS property or how you create iframes or whatever. And so that's
Okay.
how I first got started programming. And I was super curious from the start, so I decided to learn JavaScript myself. And I learned very basics of JavaScript, and that's how I started programming. I did a few small website projects just for myself. None of them ever launched to the internet. All of that stayed on localhost. And then next step was jQuery. A lot of people probably also know that
jQuery.
framework.
Wow.
Yeah. Quite ancient by now, I would guess, but I think people are still using it from time to
Yeah.
time.
There are people that go back. I mean, that they regret to using other technologies and they go back to jQuery for some reason. So
Yeah, it's
it's still
simple.
there.
It's simple, and you don't have the bloat of a billion different JavaScript frameworks if you just stick to jQuery.
I,
I
I
figure
think I
everything.
think in I think in 30 years it will be that framework will be like Cobalt today. When
Yeah,
people are still requiring that technology for maintenance. So
yeah. But then again, I mean, learn jQuery now, and you're gonna get very rich in 30 years if there's no one else who can still use it,
exactly.
and some websites need it to to stay
Yeah.
maintainable. But yeah, so I did that, and next step was PHP, and I had a very long PHP phase during like grade 6 to 10, I would say something around that. So
Hmm.
still during school, and I developed these browser games and like a Facebook clone and a SoundCloud clone and all of this stuff, but all just for my personal use and just to have fun and just to write some code. So none of them ever became public. And that was right around the time when I got my first iPod Touch and my first iPhone a few years later.
Wow.
And from the very beginning, I obviously fell in love with the devices. I mean, they're like that.
What
That
was your
never
first
went
iPhone?
away. Sorry.
What was your first iPhone?
I think it was the iPhone 4. I'm not quite sure whether it was the 4 or the 4S, but one of the two, because
Wow.
my dad always used to have this yearly renewal plan with
Hmm.
like the German version of T-Mobile. It's called Telekom.
Okay.
And he
Okay.
always had this plan where he gets a new phone every year. So one year he decided to not sell his old phone and instead give it to me. So that's how I got my first iPhone.
Oh, I
And
love that.
yeah, yeah. And I actually, it's blurred right now, but up there is actually the same Grid Studio thing that you have in your
Oh,
background of an
oh
iPhone
yeah,
4.
yeah.
So yeah,
Actually,
it's the
it's an
same
iPhone
thing.
4. Yeah, right here.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I have exactly the same frame in my backdrop,
nice.
but it's so messy. I had to blur my background.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, so that's how I got my first iPhone, and I loved it. But I also loved the customizability of Android. So I went into jailbreaking from the first, like with my very first device, and I always found it fascinating the kind of tweaks and apps that people wrote and distributed on there. But I always felt like that's something I could never do. I always felt like I don't have the knowledge to do that. It's impossible for a normal person to ever learn how to create your own apps or how to create jailbreak tweaks and so on. So I never actually convinced myself to learn iOS development. And in hindsight, I think it was a good decision because learning back in the day would have meant I would have to do Objective C. And looking back now, I'm very glad that I'm not an Objective C developer, but a Swift developer. And
That will cause you mental problems. Oh, just kidding.
yeah, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure actually. But yeah, so that was my first connection to iOS development, and then I actually stopped programming for a few years until I got into university, where I studied computer science, or actually games engineering. I always tell people I study computer science,
Oh,
but actually I did. It's called informatics games engineering. It's very similar to
nice.
computer science, just a few more of the 3D and shader and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And for some reason, I decided during summer break before starting my bachelor's that it would be a good idea to prepare for computer science by learning iOS development. And that's what I did. So we went on a family trip to Italy, and I actually bought a Swift and UI kit and Sprite kit. So it had both frameworks in there, a book on UI kit and Sprite kit. And during that summer holiday, I taught myself basic UI kit, and that's how it all got started. But really, that was super basic stuff until I realized in my very first lecture that I'm definitely not going to use Swift in university, and that I had to learn Java and C and C++ and all these other languages that you usually have when doing computer science. And so I completely lost touch with iOS development. So I think I released 2 apps in my first summer. So one of them was like a space shooter game
Okay.
for iPhone. Or actually 3 apps. One of them was a calculator for Pokemon Go. So I used to play Pokemon Go, and
Oh,
there you
how is that?
it was a lot of fun. And some people might remember, if you ever played Pokemon Go in the early days, that the way that you gained experience points was by
Mhm.
evolving your Pokemon, and to
Mhm.
evolve them you need to have candy. But actually, when you evolved them, you got candy back as well. So it was kind of like a recursive function to know how much candy you needed in order to evolve
Oh,
100
okay.
Pokemon. And
Nice.
I built a very, very simple UI kit app for that. I think it was just one text field with a keyword set to a number pad and like a second UI label that displayed the output of the calculation. And then I actually also built, I would like to say, the first Apple Watch game. At least the first that I knew of. It was before there was any like game framework on Apple Watch. And it was a
Wow.
maze game. So there was a maze scrolling down your Apple Watch, and with your digital crown, you could move your player horizontally, and then you could navigate through the maze.
That's
So those were
cool.
the very first apps that I wrote. And then, as I said, university life took over. I had to do all of this other stuff and completely lost touch with iOS development. And then, actually, for my bachelor thesis, I got back into it, and I worked on an Apple Watch app again, still using WatchKit. So SwiftUI wasn't a thing
Mhm.
back then. And I think it was in 2020 that I wrote my bachelor thesis. And it was an Apple Watch app to support people with Alzheimer's and dementia, to remember to go back to their nursing homes and to remember to drink plenty of water throughout the
Okay.
day, and just stuff like that. And that's how I finally got back into iOS development. And I don't think I've had a single week without writing Swift code since that day.
Wow, that's cool. Did you publish all those applications that you mentioned? The Pokemon Go and the others?
The Pokemon Go one, I think that isn't available anymore because I used to have an app icon of Magikarp. So one of the most common or most known Pokemon used to be my
Mm.
app icon, and it was actually a Creative Commons icon. So theoretically, I thought I have the rights to use that as my app icon. And then
Okay.
4 years after publishing the app, I had to do a maintenance update in order for the app to still work with like iOS 17 or iOS 16 or whatever was the current version back then. And then Apple decided to say, no, that's not allowed anymore. You can't use a Magikarp in there because that's property of Nintendo or the Pokemon Company or whatever. And then I decided, all
Oh,
right, no one's using the app. I don't care to make a new icon. Let's just remove it from the App Store. But
okay,
I think the Space Shooter is still available. Yeah.
nice. Yeah, Nintendo, being Nintendo as always,
Yeah,
chasing
yeah,
people.
yeah. They're very big on their intellectual property.
Yeah. They are really aggressive. Wow, man. I mean, you have a lot of background since being kid. I mean, first grade. What is 6 years old? 7 years old?
Yeah. I think I was actually 7. I think I got into first grade a year late because I'm born in the summer months. So in Germany,
Mhm.
some people um, take another year in kindergarten and go to first grade a year later if they're like born in the summer. And
Okay.
that's what my parents decided for me. So yeah.
Okay. No, nice. I mean, you have and it's good also to have a lot of background in many platforms, because
Yeah.
maybe people could say that you just born and then you touch iOS and you never touch any other stuff. But I mean, if you did that, I mean, if you're watching this and you are that kind of guy, I would recommend you to explore other alternatives, not just to jump up to others, but also it's good, to learn Python, Java,
Yeah,
other
I mean,
technologies.
learning about other technologies makes you think about new concepts and about new
Exactly.
ways to write your Swift code as well. I mean, dabbling with, for example, React Native or dabbling with Kotlin multiplatform or trying some web dev. There's always stuff to learn and always different concepts that might also make sense in iOS development.
Exactly. And actually, you can understand why Apple is designing SwiftUI, for example, in that way because it's
Yeah,
getting inspirations from other reactive frameworks or so. So, I mean, we are not all the languages, all the platforms, the frameworks are built on top of many other
yeah.
things under the hood. So, yeah, great, man. So, and along with all of that, I mean, you're a YouTuber and you have your own channel to learn to teach iOS. And I mean, you told me backstage that that's one of your core pieces in your in your life. So I mean, tell me, when did you decided that okay, it's good time for me to learn to teach others about this beautiful platform?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, I did I did tell you to to talk about that topic. Yeah, so let's just continue the story. So during my bachelor's, I didn't do iOS dev, but I then did it for my bachelor thesis. And then in my
Mhm,
master's, I actually did a lot of iOS dev because during the games engineering master, we had to do a practical course.
mhm,
And in a lot of other studies, you have to do your practical course with a company. So you go to a company and then work for them for 4 months and practically
mhm,
don't get paid anything, but you gain some experience.
mhm,
And for games engineering, this wasn't the case, but instead we had to take a practical course at university. And the one that I did was about iOS development. So there was a boot camp of I think it was a week where we learned all of the fundamentals of SwiftUI and also a refresher on Swift for the people that didn't know the language, but of course I already did. So
mhm,
that was quite an enjoyable week for me. And then this was one of my favorite courses actually during my entire studies because then we had I would say 4 months, so the rest of the semester, basically, 4 month project with actual industry partners. So we
mhm,
had a customer from a company that wanted an app to be developed. Then we had a team of 4 developers and one domain expert. So the domain expert didn't actually study computer science; they studied health and sports sciences. And so they took their knowledge, and we took our programming knowledge. And then over the course of the semester, we developed a week, an app, of course,
mhm.
all together. And we did weekly Scrum meetings, and it was a very professional setting actually. And that was a lot of fun to me. And that was right around the time when I also started working on my own apps. And so I did a lot of iOS development at that time and
Mhm.
cranked out probably 4 or 5 apps to the App Store in the first year, just for fun, just apps I built for myself.
Nice.
And then eventually the course, of course, finished, and I knew the people who organized the course. So the practical course that I took.
Mhm.
And as I just said, the first part of that course was an introduction to learning iOS development.
Mhm.
and somebody had to teach that. And then I thought, all right, I know these people. I know that they want to remake all of the content, and I love iOS development. So why not let me be the one who teaches that course in the next semester? And
Mhm.
that's how I started thinking about how to teach iOS development. And then actually, the people stopped doing that course, and another group at university took over. So all of a sudden, that wasn't an opportunity for me anymore because I didn't know these new people, and I wanted to stay with my old group and so on. So that's when I decided, all right, I want to teach iOS development. I'm not going to be able to do it in university. So let's just create a YouTube account, a Twitter account, and
Nice.
let's explore what's possible. And that's how all of that started. And I haven't been the most consistent on YouTube and Twitter, I have to admit, but I don't even remember. It's been quite a few videos so far with extensive coverage of all of the new WWDC stuff. So I'm very active in June and July every year, and then getting less active throughout the summer. And yeah, that's how it's been. So that's how I started with teaching, and then I actually also got contacted by Chris over at Code with Chris, and he
Oh,
asked me to do some lessons for his platform, and then I did a course on ARKit and a course on WidgetKit for Code with Chris Plus, and
nice.
then I got connected to Peter Friese, who was the previous podcast guest of
Yeah,
yours.
yeah, yeah.
And because I had a Firebase project that I worked on, and somehow I got in touch with him on Twitter. And I mean, it's easy to get in touch with him if he's also German, same as me. So that was quite nice. And somehow that led to me speaking at Swift Leads the year after that.
Mhm.
And now coming full circle, so now I actually do teach at university because I'm now doing my PhD. And so most people don't know, but I'm not actually a full-time indie developer. I actually do my PhD full-time, and
Really?
just do all of this stuff on the side. Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know that. PhD in computer science?
Yeah, most people don't know. I
Wow.
don't I don't talk about it too much in public. Yeah.
Wow, wow. I mean, that's impressive, man. I mean, I understand now why we don't have. I mean, it's complicated sometimes to get in touch with YouTube. So, but no, I mean, you're doing great, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Good to
yeah.
know.
I'm actually doing digital medicine, so I'm in the field of digital medicine, and
Okay,
I do a lot of app development as well. So we have a lot of iOS apps. I'm working on some big iPad apps right now, and I'm
nice.
dreading it, but soon I'm gonna have to do some Kotlin apps as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I think at some point, iOS Steps needs to touch that kind of framework. So, don't feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah, but so that's what I'm doing right now, and in that context, I'm actually doing a introduction to iOS development seminar every semester, but it's not actually for computer science students; it's for medicine students. So it's a very low level, your first time touching code, your first time bringing something to the screen kind of session. It's always 2 hours, and at the end, they do actually have an app that works. It's
Okay.
of course not the most complicated app. It doesn't talk to a server or a backend or whatever, but it gives them an understanding of how development works and how you create apps and how it makes your life easier both as a student and perhaps also later on as a doctor as they are studying medicine. So yeah, I thought that I would never teach a course at university. That's why I started my YouTube channel, and then full circle now I'm actually teaching a seminar at university about iOS development.
Nice. I think I have a similar concept of why I started because I mean, since I remember 5 years old, I always want to be teacher. But the thing is that
Hmm.
you know, I mean, being a teacher in most countries, I don't know in Germany, but unless, for example, in Mexico, I mean, you don't receive any good
Hmm.
compensation at all, so you're
Yeah,
suffering, right? And it's really uh, I mean, you need to have a lot of passion about that because there are a lot
yeah,
of things that you need to handle. So, I mean, well, going back to YouTube, or well, it is a way you can express yourself. You can share the way the ideas in your own way, in your own style, right? But also, you know, I don't know. I feel nowadays. I mean, if I used to be in right now in college, a lot of things that I couldn't learn well because I was just listening a teacher that maybe he was not happy with his role and was just
Mm-hmm.
reading a document. So now there are a lot of content creators that do things really amazing. I'm explaining
Yeah.
finances, technology, programming, etc. So it's like wow. I mean, it is like you're learning, but at the same time you are enjoying the content. So that's great. And I think you have a lot of also great videos. I mean, uh, and also, I mean, I'm seeing your thumbnails, and I say, wow, this man is like putting a lot of effort in that. So yeah, uh, thanks
Yeah.
for
Thank
jumping
you.
to YouTube.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's not just about teaching, it's also about learning. I mean, some of these
Yeah.
videos I hear about a new API or a new framework or something like that at WWDC, or I hear about it on Twitter. And then of course I have to learn about it first before I can make a video on it.
Yeah.
So I either use it in one of my apps or I just learn about it just for the video. But there's always a learning opportunity with all of these videos, and be
Hmm.
that just to go back to an API that I haven't touched in a year or something like that. So it's never
Hmm.
just about teaching. And that's also uh, watchers of yours will probably also know Stuart Lynch. And for those who don't, he also does iOS development videos on YouTube. And he once tweeted that the only reason that he makes videos is for himself to go back and watch them once he forgets about the API.
Yeah, I, I I I I normally do that. It's like I did this because I need it some time ago, and then I just watch it and I said, oh, there it is. Thank you, myself.
Yeah. The amount of views on my channel that are myself going back to like old widget kit stuff or something like
Yeah.
that.
It is like, I mean, it is sometimes. I don't know if you watch Breaking Bad. I will say a big spoiler
Yeah.
here, but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I did.
it's like at the end when the guy was like saying, "Oh, this is for the family," and then he said, "Whatever, it is for me," right? So
Yeah.
at the end is that. So I mean, for not in as I don't know how to call it. Not for you literally, but in a way of okay. First, it's because I need to learn things, and then if I'm
Yeah.
learning, I think I'm able to explain it, it's because you learn the concept. So that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. It's always, for me, I just do things that are fun, and
Hmm.
teaching iOS development is fun to me, and writing iOS apps is also fun to me. So it's like the perfect fusion of some of my interests. I mean, I also, similar to you, I love teaching early on. So I was a snowboard instructor actually
Hmm.
in high school, and now I'm a taekwondo instructor as well. So
Hmm.
teaching is like, I just love seeing people learn new things. And with YouTube, you don't really see the people learning new things, but you know that when they're watching your videos, they're hopefully taking something away from that and not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
watching it to waste their time.
exactly. Had you had any time? I mean, having struggles learning something in iOS? Any topic?
Basically everything.
So,
No, there are still things that are very hard for me. So it took me a while to understand how app intents work, for example.
mm,
It took me quite a long time to actually get familiar with core data when I first learned about
oh,
that.
card data.
Somehow it
Yeah.
was always hard for me because of all of the optional stuff and all of the code generation. And then suddenly the project didn't compile anymore because the classes didn't get created or generated automatically. And
Hmm.
stuff like that was always hard for me. And a few years ago for a university project, I had to learn AR kit and reality kit. And that also
Okay.
took quite a long time to do that. I mean, I had a head start, I would say, because I did do a bunch of game development, obviously, studying
Hmm.
games engineering. So I already knew a bit about 3D graphics and 3D coordinate systems and programming and stuff like that. But learning about AR kit and reality kit, that really took a long time. And because it's just completely different from SwiftUI. It's a very different different way of writing code. And
Hmm.
I actually thought that when they announced the Vision Pro, or when there were rumors of Vision Pro, I thought
Hmm.
that they would probably do like a Swift 3D framework or something like that that was similar to
Wow.
SwiftUI but for 3D content.
Yeah. Hmm.
But apparently they never. went and did that, and instead they just changed a bunch of stuff in Reality Kit, which broke a lot of my apps.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so I thought having Reality Kit knowledge and having worked on AR apps before, I would have a head start on Vision Pro, and I could just like multi-platform is a thing in Swift, So I thought I can just run them on Vision Pro and be good to go on day one. But actually, none of the AR apps that I worked on for iOS even compile for Vision OS because it has a completely different concept of how you
Mm.
do the AR interactions, and
Mhm.
um, that's why I never did a lot of AR stuff for Vision. All I did for Vision was SwiftUI because
Okay.
that's actually multi-platform there. I wouldn't say that Reality Kit is a multi-platform framework. Honestly, I think the differences in Reality Kit between iOS and Vision OS are so big that basically you have to have two code bases.
Okay.
That might have changed in the last year. I haven't done any Vision OS dev for quite a while, but that was my first experience. Have you worked with Vision so far?
A little bit, basically, I will call it hello world things. But just because I have a lot of other things that I need to prioritize,
Yeah.
and because well, maybe it's just my perception, but I feel that the Vision Pro is not going well. So, and I'm
Yeah.
seeing even Apple not mentioning at all. So for a while, so which is like it was the superstar thing, but I know it's a niche product. But what I
Mhm.
didn't know is what you're mentioning. So that there is like breaking things between the same uh, framework. So that sounds to me like they try to rush things so much and just to adapt it in the Vision Pro framework. So, but I don't know. I don't know what happened. Hopefully, they
Yeah.
will fix that soon.
Yeah, I mean, my hopes are I mean, as you said, right now it's a very niche product, and I would consider myself a hardcore iOS and Apple guy, and I don't even have a Vision Pro, so I'm thinking, who the hell is going to buy a Vision Pro if it's not me? So I've never seen a single person wear those glasses in public. I mean, I've seen them in the Apple stores, of course, taking the tours and trying it out, but I've never seen a single person use it in public. Is that different in the US, or is that just
I,
happening in
I
Europe?
I saw a few videos from guys in New York, like
Mhm.
faking about it, but there was
Yeah,
like I mean,
like on the
some
subway,
guys
right? The people like trying to ride in the air and so on. Yeah.
exactly. But for example, I mean, in real life, I just saw this year one guy in Los Angeles airport, mealing having a meal with his family, and they had the box, or I don't know if that bag for the
Yeah, yeah. The
Vision
travel
Pro.
bag, like the
Yeah, the travel
white
bag.
case thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I was like about to say, "Hey, can I try it?" No, but I didn't. So, in just a really cool guy that allowed me to try out the Vision Pro in the last top PC 24,
Mhm.
and but other than that, what I'm seeing is that it's really, I mean, you need to be extremely careful with that device because it is like built in pieces. And if you grab it in the wrong way, you can break
It's all just
the
magnetic codes, magnets and
exactly.
so on. Yeah.
So, but other than that, I mean, no one from my job, for example, or I'm
Mhm.
not seeing people in the coffee shop like, "Hey, I'm here in the you know in the metaverse," or things like that. So, but yeah, also because it's very expensive, right? I mean, if it's like around $1,000, maybe I will see more people, but three.
I think that's the main issue, the price point,
Mhm,
and that's why I think that Apple has been silent about it for quite a while now because in my mind they're working on a Vision Air or a Vision. So
mhm,
I think them releasing a Vision Pro to me means that this is not the only device in the lineup. So
yeah.
they have the MacBook, they have the MacBook Air, they have the MacBook Pro. They have the iPhone, they have the iPhone Plus and the iPhone Pro. So
Mhm,
they have the AirPods, AirPods Max, AirPods Pro. So they always have like a lower grade or lower tier version of their Pro models. So
mhm,
I understand that they're launching or that they launched with Vision Pro just because the hardware wasn't there yet to create an Air device or whatever, or like the R&D just wasn't there yet. But I think
uh-huh,
they have to do a Vision or an Apple Vision Air in the future in order to make this a mass market device build. No one's gonna pay $3,500 to use it half an hour per week. Like no one's gonna do that.
Exactly. That's mostly a point for the people that have that device. And actually, I don't know if you saw that Meta launch a prototype.
Hmm.
Some wear glasses like this one, but they project things in
Yeah.
your eye. I think that's impressive. I don't know how much that will cost, but I mean, I think that's just a baseline from what will come. In a few years. So, but I think the biggest thing for at least people like me, is like, I mean, having prescription, it is that it is not straightforward just to put that thing and go good
Hmm.
to go. So, I mean, I cannot wear it. I mean, if someone uh, if I'm grab the Vision Pro from someone else, I mean that device is adapted to their own prescriptions or things. So my prescription is
Yeah.
different. So I mean, it's a
Yeah, and it's
very
also
pretty
tied to
individual.
their Apple ID, right? So you can't view
Exactly.
any of your photos, any of your videos. So it's not a shareable experience.
Exactly. So, and if I try to sell it later, well, I can't because unless someone has the same prescription like me. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there are a lot of things that we need to figure out. So,
Yeah, but I think Apple is king at figuring these things out. I think that
yeah.
they're gonna manage it somehow, and if it takes another 5 years, then I don't care about it. I think that the vision
Hmm.
of the device um, is a very big one, and I think that this has to happen in the future. I think this is one of the next logical steps for computing. I think that eventually there probably won't be screens, or like no more laptop screens, no more MacBook screens, no more iMac screens. I think that people will just put on their vision or whatever it may be called in the future, like some sort of smart AR, VR glasses. And I think that they're just going to use that for the displays, and that makes it cheaper as well, right? Because then you don't need a MacBook and an iMac and an iPhone and an Apple Watch, because then you just have one device that might be the screen for all of them.
I saw a picture on Twitter yesterday when someone was carrying the Vision Pro in the travel bag along with the new Mac Mini.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think that's the best combination. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the computer, but you don't have the monitor. But then the Vision Pro or whatever Vision coming up can bring the monitor, but I will say not the computer, the functional. But my point is that I think that could be not the evolution for a mobile device, but maybe for the computer. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't instead of carrying over your laptop, why not that thing? I mean, but not as heavy as putting marks in
Yeah.
your face. Maybe a pair of glasses like that. So that would be awesome. I can
Yeah.
get rid of my monitor.
I think we need the hardware of that new Meta. Is it called Horizons, or what is the glass, the new glasses
Yeah,
called?
Horizon,
Something like that.
Horizon.
I
Yeah,
think we need the
yeah,
hardware of that and the software from Apple Vision. And I think that would be a good marriage between the two of
yeah,
them,
yeah,
because
yeah.
having a very lightweight and light form factor pair of AR glasses means that you can also wear them in public. It means that you don't have to be at home in your office and feel like a fool if you go in public with such large glasses.
Exactly.
And I think that has to be the next step. And of course, that's a big step away from what the Vision Pro currently is. But I believe that that's also Apple's vision for it. I don't think that they want to stay with these bulky, heavy things
Mhm.
on your head.
Yeah,
Yeah, who
let's see.
knows?
Let's see how it goes. But I mean, they have the money for doing great things. So let's see.
Yeah,
Let's see
definitely,
how it goes.
definitely.
Okay, moving on. I would like to go back to one thing you mentioned. You had the chance to participate in Swiftlets uh,
Hmm.
last year or a couple of years ago. I mean, I would like to know how was your experience, but also, I have a question. Maybe again, it's my perception, but I feel that Europe has a great community of iOS developers, and I don't think the same in US. The only
Hmm.
big event I think maybe we have Deep Dish in Chicago, but other than that, I think the biggest event is TopTC or a few events
Yeah,
outside of TopTC. But from what I know, I mean, in Europe you have, and it's Spain, you have uh, many events in UK and or France, etc. So I don't know. I mean, Why do you think is that? So why there's a strong community there?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, perfect person to ask there would probably be an organizer of such an event. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been to Swift Leads as a speaker
Hmm.
once, and also just as an attendee the following year. And this year, unfortunately, I missed it because I did hand in two talk proposals, but unfortunately, both of them
Hmm.
got declined.
Okay.
So I didn't go there this year. Um, but these are my only conference experiences, and other than that, all I see is on Twitter. And
Okay.
so thinking about it, I would assume that the US, of course, has all of these very big tech giants. They have all of these super large companies like Meta, like Apple, like Google, these huge companies that have very big iOS departments. And
Hmm.
this is just one explanation that I would have in my head. So these huge companies don't really exist in the same manner in Europe. So of course, they have their own branches in Europe, and of course, there's Apple in London, and there's Google in London, and there's also other facilities throughout Europe. And of
Hmm.
course, there was the Vision Pro Lab in Munich as well, and in
Mm.
London, and so on. Um, but I think that in Europe, there's mostly iOS developers from very small companies, from companies where the iOS department is just one, two, or three people. And I
Okay.
think that might be part of the reason why there's more conferences here, because there's more room to exchange because everyone has a totally different experience of iOS development, because everyone's in a
Okay.
totally different field, working with a very small team, and could be a reason. Now, I've never organized a conference, and I don't think I will in the
Mhm.
foreseeable future. So I'm not sure about it, but could be a reason. I mean, what do you think? What would
that,
be?
that's a valid point actually, because I mean, maybe you want to expand uh, your knowledge. I mean, if you're just working with two guys, maybe it
Yeah,
is not
exactly.
enough to share. I mean, with strong engineers out there. So yeah, and because I don't know, but I feel, Europe, maybe in the picture, in a map, it is looks large, but I mean, you can connect across many countries really easy.
Yeah.
So that is something. I mean, I don't want to. I will give a little spoiler about a plan I have in future, but I would like to visit Europe later, and I don't know, because I'm deciding. I mean, if I want to stay here for a long time in US, or moving
Hmm.
to Europe. So I would like just to visit more places, but stay longer. Well,
Hmm.
if I'm there in Europe, I will let you know. So,
Yeah, hit me up for
but
sure.
yeah, but the thing is that I'm also that there are a lot of indie community that we will talk about indie stuff
Yeah.
in just a moment. So which is great. I think that's what you said is accurate, because in US you have a lot of companies, and most people are just working for those companies. But instead of
Yeah.
in and also in Europe, I don't know. I think the mm, I, I'm not saying that the compensation is not high, but maybe not as high as US.
Yeah.
So probably people are exploring, other ways for earning more money. So maybe
Yeah,
indie
and I think
going
it's
in
also
is
just
well.
about the learning opportunities. I mean, if you work at Meta, for example, I would assume that they have hundreds of iOS developers throughout their
Mhm.
different projects, and probably not all of
Yeah,
them do Swift, and some do Objective C, some might do some
yeah.
React stuff or whatever. I mean, there's different projects, but if
Mhm.
you have a question about iOS development, you go to one of your 500 coworkers. But if you're in a very small company, then you only have two
Yeah.
coworkers that work in the same code base as you, meaning that they have the exact same experience as you. How would they answer your question? So I think that asks for a conference. I think that could be part of the reason, because you don't have access to the people throughout your company, or throughout, like, if you live in the valley,
Mhm.
there's a billion iOS developers there. I mean, it's super easy to get connected with anyone. Whereas if you live in Hamburg or Berlin or Paris or whatever, it's much harder to get connected. And I think that's why there are so many conferences in all of these bigger European cities.
and and I will tell you something. Maybe it's just my way of thinking, but I think in Europe there's a better collaborative way to work. And
Yeah, could be.
unless in my
Yeah.
experience, at Meta, I mean, yeah, you have thousands of developers, iOS developers, but to be honest, not most of them are focused on their work, and it's a
Hmm.
really aggressive and competitive way to do things. So
Yeah.
it is rare that, hey, let's jump together to learn something. So most people are really busy just doing their stuff. So and then don't look around. So
Yeah.
that's maybe another
Yeah.
reason.
And I mean, I'm not an iOS developer per se myself, right? I'm not a software engineer. I'm doing my PhD, so I don't have those company insights. But I know a lot of people throughout Europe, from Netherlands and from Germany and from other countries in Europe, where the companies actually like they help you start your side project. They help you work on your own app in your free time. They actually support that. So I've heard from people where they have their entire Friday off from work to work on their own stuff. And of course,
Yeah,
that gives you the opportunity to visit conferences. That gives you the opportunity to prepare for conferences. I think that's also a big difference.
that's gold. I want that in my life.
Yeah,
Having
yeah,
all the Friday, I mean, working just 4 days in a week, that will be awesome.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I would
if
have
that means
do it.
that it's less work, right? If that means that
Yeah,
it's the
of
same
course.
work but
Yeah,
squashed
yeah,
into 4 days, that would be
yeah,
that wouldn't be too good.
yeah. No, yeah. I don't mean working 4 days, but just 12 hours away. No, 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 no.
Yeah,
That's another point.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's probably many different reasons for that as well, and perhaps that's just because of the flow of things. If there's one very successful conference, and of course in the US you have DubDub, and that is
Mhm.
not a regular iOS conference. That is not
Yeah,
comparable to SwiftLeads. That's not
yeah. Exactly.
comparable to FrenchKit, or I think they changed
Mhm.
their name. I'm not sure, but that's on a totally different level. And
Mhm.
you don't have WWDC in Europe, so you have to have, or people want their own experience similar to DubDub. And I think
Yeah.
that might also be an incentive of why there are more conferences here, because it is quite expensive to go to DubDub from Europe. I mean, the flight alone is super expensive. The hotel's gonna be booked. Every single hotel is gonna be booked. Every single Airbnb in the area is gonna be booked. So going there is super expensive. Whereas going to a neighboring country within the EU, you can do that by train. I mean, that's usually like a 5, 6, 7 hour train ride,
Mhm.
super cheap, and that might also be part of the reason, because we just don't have access to the best conference out there.
That's a really valid point. Yeah, it's very expensive. Not only for European people, but also, I mean, I have a friend. I mean, one of my mentors arrived to WWDC uh, this time this year, and he told me, "Hey, man, this is really expensive. I mean, every single
Yeah,
thing, every single meal, it's costing many dollars. So I don't have a lot of budget. So yeah, I got it. But at the same time, if I want to attend those European uh, conferences, it's a little bit expensive.
yeah,
All
yeah.
the
Of course,
traveling
of course. Yeah, I think everything
for
where you have to
experience.
change continent is going to be very expensive. So
Hmm.
that's why I haven't been to DubDub yet. That's why I haven't been to
Yeah,
Deep Dish Chicago, because Deep Dish Swift Chicago, because it's just
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
tricky.
it's worth it for the experience, but it's also not worth it because it's so expensive coming from Europe. And in the same
Yeah.
reason why most US guys don't come to the European conferences. I mean, last year at Swift Leads there was Ariel from App Figures, and
Mhm.
and I think there was one talk actually by a US person. But other than that, all of the talks were given by people from Europe and surrounding areas. So
Mhm.
of course it's easier to get connected like that. Did you ever go to DubDub yourself? Were you there this year?
I went in 2023.
Hmm.
I went inside the Apple campus. In 24, I just went around for conference. I attended one more thing
Ah,
conference,
okay.
and I met a lot of people. I basically was there because, to be honest, and also attended one of the iOS Dev happy hour. Uh,
Hmm.
that
One of the live
organized by,
meetups.
yeah, yeah, organized by Michaela and other folks.
Hmm.
So I feel it in the same way, right? You're just watching a video, to be honest. So the,
Yeah.
the big experience today is just going to the campus. It is not like before the pandemic, when you attended the event and you have a better collaborate, how can I say, experience collaborating each other with, or asking questions, or having the guys, the presenters in front of you. So I mean, it's But
Yeah.
I think even if you don't have a top DC ticket, it is good for people attending. I know it's expensive. I know. I mean, maybe you should have a better reason for coming, but for people around, so I mean, it's a good experience. I enjoy it. So
I think if you can turn it into a work trip, then I think it's totally worth it.
exactly. Yeah. You need to have multiple ways, to to afford that kind of event.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would still like if I had the chance to go to DubDub, I would definitely take it if it wasn't this expensive, right? So if it was a work trip and work paid for it, then I would definitely go. I mean, no questions asked. Even if it's just for all of the like evening events on the day before and the day after, and all of these like hackathons that happen throughout the week and all of that stuff. I think that's a great experience, and you probably meet a lot of definitely like-minded and probably also very nice people there.
Yeah, definitely. They're great. It's a great community, I will say.
Hmm.
There are a lot of people, willing to help you. So
Yeah, and you know those
that's really
people
amazing.
that go to DubDub, those are the most hardcore people as well. So there probably no like no one who doesn't really care about it. Everyone who's there really cares about DubDub, really cares about the Apple products, really cares about the new frameworks and APIs. So it's
Yeah,
probably also just nice to meet new friends and probably super easy to get talking with each other, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I knew a lot of people. I met sorry, a lot of people last time. So yeah, really
Hmm.
amazing. But by the way, before jumping to the last topic for this conversation, Flo, I just have one question about your experience with Swift. So you mentioned that you got accepted for one, and then you applied next year, and you got rejected. What would you say was the difference for being accepted or not? I mean, any suggestions or any idea why you think your other uh, proposal was accepted and the other not didn't?
So I know that at SwiftLeads they do a blinded review process. So they don't take yourself into consideration. They only take your talk title and your description into consideration.
Mm.
So I thought that my first talk got accepted because Peter Friese suggested me to go to SwiftLeads the year before that, and he talked to Adam, the organizer, about it, and I
Mm.
thought that was the reason, but it actually turns out that it's a blended process, and I didn't even know that
Okay,
I wrote the proposal. So,
nice.
but yeah, but what's the main difference? I mean, I don't know their criteria for judging the proposals. I
Mhm.
can only guess. But
Yeah.
the ones that got rejected were all technical topics, where I said I'm
Okay.
going to explore AR development for Vision
Mhm.
Pro, for example. That was one of the proposals that I had, how it compares to
Mhm.
AR development for iOS. Then
Okay.
another one was about Widget Kit, how you develop interactive widgets, live activities, all of the Widget Kit stuff, including all of the new stuff, also
Mhm.
got rejected. And the talk that got accepted was a very personal one, where I just talked about my story. And
Okay.
I'm not gonna recommend to for everyone to just talk about their story, because then we would have a conference without too much iOS content, and everyone would just talk about their personal life. Um,
Yeah, I got it.
but I think the difference is that it's different. I think the difference is that it's not one of 100 technical proposals. It was the only personal proposal. 99 people handed in a technical proposal about, I don't know, animations in SwiftUI and tips to go indie and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
perhaps I was the only one who did a personal story and told my own story. And I think that probably was one of the reasons why it got accepted. Now,
Wow,
different
that's good.
conferences might have different reasons, different
Mhm.
criteria, and different processes. But that's my experience so far. And I mean, I'm not too good at it, obviously, because I handed in 5 proposals and 4 got rejected.
Okay.
And only 1 was accepted. But I mean, that's the main difference between all of them. The accepted one was personal.
Yeah, I will take it. I mean, being different is one of the things, and yeah, like
Yeah,
you said, I mean, we have many ways. I mean, I think those guys receive dozens of the same topics
yeah.
over and over. So I mean, they will pick the first one the best of them according to their criteria. But yeah, that's a good one. So having a differentiation of or I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. You have to find the thing that's weird about you, right? The thing that differentiates you from all the other people. So
Yeah,
if you're working at Apple, of course, that's also a big advantage to getting
absolutely.
getting accepted at a conference. I mean, who works at Apple and applies for a conference? Practically no one does, compared to the majority of iOS developers. So if you do decide to do that, it's probably relatively easy to get your proposal accepted. But not everyone works at Apple, but everyone has some differentiator. So for me, it might have been my story. For someone else, it might have been their experience not only in iOS development, but also in Android development and talking about the
Mhm.
differences between the two. Find, I think you have to find a thing that makes you different.
You just gave me an idea for a conference talk now. I will talk to you later about it. But yeah, that's a good one.
Sounds
Thanks for sharing.
exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think in the end, conferences aren't just about learning. I the one that I spoke at was my first conference ever, not just my first iOS conference. It was the first conference I ever went to. So I had no idea of what to expect. So I thought that I would go in there and learn about all these new APIs and all these new patterns and stuff like that. But in the end, I talked to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the conference is mainly about. It's not, I mean, of course, you also learn new things, but it's to get inspired, to talk to people, to get motivated. And that's why I think that the conference talk also has to have a part of you in the talk.
Yeah.
It's not just about the technical concept that you're talking about. And that's probably the differentiator between the good talks and the not so good talks. The not so good talks, they only care about SwiftUI animations, but
Mhm.
they don't add their own flair to it. They don't add their own story. I think the good talks, they incorporate it with their own story, and they talk about how they learned about animations, why they loved animations, perhaps because they played some games as a child or whatever. I think that's what makes a good conference talk, and a good YouTube video as well.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing. So so some proposals rejected in conferences, I'm transforming them into my own
Yeah.
videos. So because I think it's you have managed your own way to do it things. So but yeah, I would like to participate in conference in Europe soon. So yeah, so I'm still trying. Let's see next
Yeah,
year.
I mean there's tons of conferences, and if you do decide to go, let me know, and perhaps I can I can make it happen as
Yeah.
well. But as I
Yeah,
said, I've
sure.
only been to Swiftly so far. So, but well, actually, last year I was also at a Google conference in Amsterdam. So I got invited there, and that wasn't about iOS development at all. It was about new Google APIs, and
Mhm.
of course, that was the year after ChatGPT release. So they talked a lot about machine learning, and I think it wasn't even called Gemini at that point. I think they still had a different name for their AI product. But there's so much going on. So if you ever happen to actually go to a conference in Europe, definitely let me know.
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
try
I
to
will
be
tell
there
you.
as well.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I'm waiting for it. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing all of that, man. I think yeah, it's really valuable info. Now, the main topic before wrapping up things. I I know you. I mean, along with all the stuff you are doing, that is a lot already. YouTube, your PhD, etc. I mean, you worked in application, LaunchBuddy, to help indie
Mhm.
developers. I would like to learn more about it. How did you get that idea, and how hard was that? I mean, transforming that idea into a real product, because it is not just a random app. Like, hey, I mean, this is something that I did, and I never touched it. No, you are giving support every week, every day. So I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of posts on Twitter about it. So could you tell us how was your experience with that project?
Yeah, sure, sure. Thank you. Um, I worked on a lot of different apps, a lot of very small apps that just scratched my own itch, right? So
Hmm.
like an app to do mental math, another app to I don't know do the Pokemon Go calculation. A lot of different small projects, and I lost my organization. I didn't know what to do next for app 1. I didn't know what to do next for app 2. I didn't know which 5 different app ideas I had in between because I had no place to keep everything structured. And of course, I tried Jira in university. I tried GitHub projects. I tried Trello. I also tried reminders and Apple Notes. I tried all of these things, but I found that none of them, of course, were tailored for indie developers. They were either tailored for personal things like the reminders in the Notes app or Trello, for example, or they were tailored for very professional environments like GitHub issues, GitHub projects, Jira, and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so I thought, okay, I'm an iOS developer. I struggle with this issue, and I bet that there's thousands of people out there who also struggle with this issue. So I thought to myself, what would a project management tool made for indie developers look like? What would the concepts be? So in Jira, you have the concept of sprints. So I thought, I don't really like the concept of a sprint working working by myself or being the sole developer. I don't really care about doing a sprint and defining exactly what I want to do this week. So instead I thought, why not do releases instead of sprints? And that's the core idea of LaunchBuddy. So instead of planning your work for the next week or for the next month, you're planning what you're going to do in which version of your app. So
Okay.
that's basically the core idea behind LaunchBuddy. And you can also, of course, write down your app ideas. And then once you turn it into an app, you can do that in LaunchBuddy. You create your first release. And you can say, all right, in my MVP release, I want to release it on December 1st, for example. And I wanted to include feature A, B, C, and D. And then I want to also do marketing tasks A, B, C. And then I can structure that into my first release. And then I might already have ideas for the second release. And I can also structure that already and plan that already. So I try to take the concepts of some of these more professional tools like Jira and turn them into something that's actually nice to use as an indie developer and doesn't have all of this overhead.
Okay.
And then, of course, LaunchBuddy had a ton of iterations over the time that it's been around. It's actually the project that I've been working on the longest time, or that I've been continuously improving for the longest time out of all of my personal projects. And it's evolved quite a lot. So actually, in the beginning, it started as just a macOS app, because in my mind, this is the companion to Xcode. So in my mind, you have three tools that you're using. You're using Xcode to code the app, using LaunchBuddy to plan and schedule your tasks and schedule your releases. And then you're using App Store Connect to actually release it to the public, to view your analytics and stuff like that. That was the stack that I envisioned an indie developer to use. And that's why I made LaunchBuddy as a standalone macOS app. And then tons and tons of people actually asked me to create an iOS app. And I thought, why would anybody use a project manager on iOS if the project that they're managing is going to happen on their Mac? Like, they're gonna use their Mac to write the app. Why wouldn't they manage it on their Mac as well? And then eventually I, of course, gave in and I started to write the iOS app. And since then, I also actually ported it to iPadOS. And let me tell you, it's been quite a journey doing the multi-platform development. So I'm glad that I did it in SwiftUI, because, of course, there are parts that I can reuse in the different platforms. But it's definitely not a write once, use everywhere kind of situation. So
Okay.
multi-platform SwiftUI is way dirtier than Apple makes it seem.
Exactly, that's my point. So Apple is saying, okay, you have one code for everything, but in reality, I mean, how hard is that? I mean, what do you think are the pain points of
Oh,
multi-platform
there are
SwiftUI?
tons of pain points, starting with API availability. I mean, things like list styles appear different on iOS and macOS. And so for every single list that I have in LaunchBuddy, I have an if available iOS check to change the list style on iOS, and then another else if available macOS check to change the list style on macOS. So even just these minor things, they add up over time. So it's the list styles, it's the form styles, it's the order of buttons in alerts, it's how a sheet appears on iOS. A sheet is a completely different experience compared to macOS. On macOS, I would say a sheet is more the way that an alert appears on iOS. It's just a thing in the middle of the screen, right? Whereas on
Yeah.
iOS, it blocks the entire screen. So yes, you can reuse some of the code for example, a view with all of your tasks right now. A list with like 3 columns of backlog, working on, and done. Of course, I can reuse that code, across the different operating systems. And some of the like editing your release views and stuff like that, I can reuse that. But all of the glue that sticks that together, that is very platform dependent. So another example is navigation. On iOS, you have push navigation between basically all of your screens. Sometimes you might have a sheet, sometimes you might have a full screen cover, but most of the time it's a push navigation. And then you have this tab view at the bottom. But on macOS, all of that is completely different. You barely have any push navigation. You mostly have your navigation bar on the leading side of your screen, where you select the tab that you're opening. So all of this like navigation stuff, all of this glue that sticks the app together is completely different in all of the platforms. And one thing that I found when adding the iPad version of LaunchBuddy is that iPad is actually very similar to macOS, and it's not that similar to iOS. So I actually
Okay.
don't reuse any of my navigation code from iOS for iPadOS. It's basically the macOS stuff.
Wow.
So there's tons of learnings in there. And another one that really, really, really annoys me is images. So
Images?
images, you have SwiftUI.image, right? The thing that you use to display an image from your asset catalog. Then you have async image to load an image from your backend or whatever.
Yeah.
But what do you do if you have the image saved to the file system? You usually create a UI image with the data and initialize it like that. But there's no UI image on macOS. There's
No.
NS image. So you have to have your
Okay.
own bridging that translates to NS image on macOS and UI image on iOS. So
Oh,
Apple gives us
okay.
SwiftUI and SwiftUI.image, and you think, wow, that's good. I can use that everywhere. But in reality, you still have to write platform-dependent code, and you still have to use AppKit. You still have to use UIKit.
So, okay, hold on for a second. So, because I'm trying also to create a multi-platform app. So, are you saying that the image, SwiftUI image that we use in iOS or iPad, it is not compatible with Mac?
No, the SwiftUI image is compatible with Mac.
Okay.
But in my case, so when you create a project in LaunchBuddy, so let's say you're working on an app called Fitness Tracker. So you create a project Fitness Tracker in LaunchBuddy, and then I allow you to add your app icon to the project, just so it looks nice in your
Yeah.
project list in LaunchBuddy. And then, of course, I need to save that icon somewhere. So in LaunchBuddy, I save it to the file system. So I take the PNG, import it via a file importer, and then I think file importer is the SwiftUI API for that. And then I save that to the file system. And if I want to display that image, I take the URL, create a data object from that URL, and pass the data object into a UI image, and then take that UI image and pass it into a SwiftUI image.
Ah,
But UI image is not available on macOS. So this entire piece of code, which is probably
all right.
like 10, 15 lines of code, I would say, is different on iOS than it is on macOS, because the API to create an NS image is different from the API to create a UI image. So you have to create
Okay.
your own wrappers around that. So
Okay.
the issue is basically, I love SwiftUI, I totally do, and I love that parts of it are multi-platform and some things work great. For example, sheets and forms and stuff like that works great, and you don't need to change anything. Also, toolbar APIs, all of that, I really enjoy that, and basic button styles. But then the things where you do go back to UIKit, those are the things that are a pain on a multi-platform app, because you will have to duplicate that code, because all of the UIKit stuff just isn't available on macOS. And it also, I'm not sure if all of that stuff is available on visionOS either.
Good. That's a good question. I'm not sure
Yeah.
about it, but probably not.
Yeah. So of course you could solve that problem by using third-party libraries that extend SwiftUI with some of the UIKit features and so on, and perhaps they're also ported to AppKit. But I personally don't like to use too many third-party libraries, because I like programming, I like coding, and I want to do it myself. And this isn't a fancy business project that needs to make a lot of money and where a lot of people are working on it. So I can afford to just write the code myself. And that's why I have these pain points. Now, in a different setting, you might not have these pain points, but that's just my experience. And it is a lot of fun to write multi-platform code, especially when you can reuse parts of your code. And of course, also all of your logic, you can reuse that. All of your so LaunchBuddy uses core data. Of course, I can reuse all of the core data stuff, and widget stuff I can also reuse and stuff like that. and that's a lot of fun. But to me, it's also a lot of fun to write the other code that doesn't work out of the bat, where you have to do it yourself. Yeah, but
it,
that's just because it's a personal project, right? In a work project, that might be a completely different situation. If you're just using SwiftUI, you probably don't have to have a lot of different pieces of code for different platforms. But having this division between SwiftUI and UIKit, that's what makes it hard to port your
mm.
project.
Okay. Is someone that is listening or watching this episode wants to or have an idea of, okay, I want to start a multi-platform application, what would you recommend? I mean, would you recommend going further? I mean, thinking about all the different platforms from the scratch, or would you recommend to go first and implementing your stuff with, let's say, iOS or macOS, one of those, and then adapt it to support the other platforms later? What do you think is a better idea?
Yeah, it's tough because I'm setting a bad example here because I always rush right into coding. I don't ever do any mock-ups or anything like that. But I would think that if you take the time and create a mock-up for how you would want the screen to look like on macOS, how you would like it to look like on iOS, and how you would like it to look on iPadOS and Vision or even the watch or TV, there are so many different platforms. I think if you take that step, then you from the get-go know which code you will be able to reuse. And then from the get-go, you can think about your architecture and design your app in a way where it automatically adapts to the different platforms and where you don't have to have all of this code duplication. So in LaunchBuddy, I used when I first wrote the iOS app, I redid all of the UI from scratch. So I had one chunk of code only running on macOS. Then I
Mhm.
had the shared code for core data. And then I had another chunk of code doing all of the iOS UI. And that was also not a good idea. Of course, it was faster to implement because I didn't have to touch my old code. And touching my old
Mhm.
code is always bad because it takes a lot of time. Because I always forget what I wrote and what my idea was. Um,
Mhm.
but then half a year later, I went back and I actually deleted all of the iOS code and adapted the macOS code. So now I have one code base again that's mostly shared between the
Mhm.
different platforms. And as I said, most screens are shared, and then just like navigation bars and tab views and the settings screen, for example, those are different for different platforms. So settings, for example, I don't reuse any of that across the platforms because they're just different. The iOS settings differ a lot from the macOS settings because on
Okay.
macOS I have settings for the window background, for the size that LaunchBuddy has when it first opens. I have settings
Okay.
for menu bar items. All of that doesn't really make sense to have in a shared piece of code. So that is detached from the different platforms. But my recommendation would probably be to start with mockups, to start thinking about which piece of code you can probably share, which piece of code you can't share, and then go from there.
What do you recommend for mocking your application?
Pen and
Any
paper.
tool? Okay. Okay. I like that.
So
It's
I don't use I mean I use Figma, but only for my YouTube thumbnails. I don't use it
okay.
for its intended purpose of sketching out software. So I either for the multi-platform stuff I would recommend pen and paper or the design tool that you're familiar with. So I think that being an expert in one thing is better than being mediocre at several things.
Mhm.
So I would say I will not recommend a specific tool to you. If you have already got some experience with Figma, use Figma. If you got some experience with Sketch, use Sketch. Photoshop, pen and paper, then do that. Um, for a project where it's only iOS or it's only on the Mac, I just go right into SwiftUI because to me personally, with my experience, I haven't used a lot of design tools in the past. So I'm just way faster coding up a mockup in SwiftUI using the live preview than I would
Mhm.
be in learning to use Sketch. So my suggestion would be, what are you already an expert on, or what have you already used in the past, and use that to create the mockups. Don't need to learn anything new.
Yeah. Absolutely. I used also the better technology I know and I have right from me. So, for example, I use, I don't know if you know that, but I create all my thumbnails using Keynote. Or
Oh
now the
yeah.
animations I use, I mean, it's also from Keynote. I know
Hmm.
could be very simple, compared to After Effects or other stuff, but I don't have enough time for learning all the stuff.
Yeah.
So I try to do my own, and I think I feel good for the purpose of what I want to share. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I actually also used to use Keynote for my thumbnails, and then eventually I went to Figma because it was easier for me to do certain stuff like remove backgrounds and so on.
Yeah,
But use the tool that you know, and I mean the same
exactly.
applies to development. I don't think I don't get this whole debate on should you use React Native, should you use UIKit, should you use SwiftUI, should you just use whatever you know. Like it doesn't in the end it doesn't really matter, especially if it's a personal project. Of course, in work projects that's a whole different topic, and you might have some other requirements where it has to be multi-platform. Then of
Mhm.
course you can't use UIKit for that. But if you already have UIKit experience, then I think create your personal projects in UIKit, and that's the best solution then.
And I think also, I mean, the concept of LaunchBuddy, as you said, it's working on releases. So the point
Hmm.
is releasing the app,
Yeah,
right? It is not just keeping idea on your own. So, and if you follow that, it's like, okay, the point is release launching the app, and
yeah,
at some point you
exactly.
will make it iterate over it. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. I I I don't believe in perfectionism, so I know that a lot of people struggle with that, and
mhm,
they work on their app for a year or two, or I've seen people work on their app for 3 years and not release it. But in my mind, better be dirty in the beginning, have a first version out, and then you can iterate it and make it better over time. Listen to your customers. Perhaps you can even pivot the tech stack. I mean, I know people who completely rewrote their app from SwiftUI to AppKit because in the end they found out that's a better approach. I don't think that you always necessarily know in the beginning what's the best approach, and you just have to get started. And
mhm,
that's what I want to help people with LaunchBuddy. It's to get launching, to get shipping, and not
mhm.
to spend hours planning everything out meticulously. I think that getting started is the most important step. And there are different things you should get started with. And the first one is thinking about your project. Second one is working about the project. But
Mhm.
the biggest one is launching a project. You need to get started launching. And a lot of people are afraid of getting rejected from the app review team. And a lot of people are afraid of their customers not caring about the app idea or the feature set. Just ship it and find out.
Yeah, totally agree. I have one last question before wrapping up the episode. What about the marketing and all the
Hmm.
App Store Connect and all stuff? Because I mean, just making the app is one challenge, big challenge.
Yeah.
But now how I mean, how people will know that my app exists in the App Store in the first place? I know you have a YouTube channel that will help you to promote the app, but I don't know. I mean, tell us. I mean, do you have to learn something more about marketing or communicating to your audience? Uh,
Yeah, I think marketing is the hardest part about iOS development or about indie iOS development. About
mhm.
not about iOS development itself, because usually you have a marketing department at your company, right? And they handle
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. But
Mhm.
if you're an indie, you're a one-man show. You have to do everything yourself. And
Mhm.
what I see a lot of people struggle with, including myself, is the marketing. Because as a developer, you might be good at thinking about your customer. You're definitely good at making your app, but what
Mhm.
happens after the release? And I actually built a couple of tools in LaunchBuddy to help you with that, but um, it's very tough. And I think it depends mostly on the type of project that you're working on. So I am lucky that LaunchBuddy is an app for developers, and my audience on Twitter and on YouTube is iOS developers.
Yeah,
So of course, not all of them are indies, but part of the target group is exactly who's already watching my content. So
that makes
a big
sense.
marketing channel for me, of course, is just posting development updates on Twitter. I don't have to put a lot of effort into that necessarily because I'm already working on the next LaunchBuddy version. I can just tell people about that. Gets a
Mhm.
couple of likes, gets a couple of downloads, and a couple of purchases every time. So that, of course, is a very privileged situation for me. And I know that if you're, for example, working on a tennis app, then you probably don't have a network of 10,000 tennis players who are waiting for your every post on Twitter. So then you definitely have to have a different marketing approach. And then I
Mhm.
think a good way to get started is Apple Search Ads. And a lot of people probably don't know, but you actually have $100, I believe, of free credit in Apple Search Ads to get you started. So you can use that to get started with the basic Apple search ad, and that probably brings you in a few hundred downloads, depending on the cost for your exact campaign. And then you can go from there. And then I see a lot of people talking about finding the community. So for a tennis app, you might I don't know, you might think about going to Reddit and finding a tennis community, or you might talk to the people that you know that already play tennis and get feedback from them on how to improve the app, and maybe they tell their friends, and then maybe someday your app grows a bit, and then you can sponsor a small tennis tournament, and then
Mhm.
people, like, you have to get into the community that your app is made for. And in my case, my app is made for indie developers, which are already my audience. So my marketing
Mhm.
is mainly the social media channels.
That's a very, very good point. So I have right now two apps in mind. One is including AI, but the thing is
Hmm.
that not most of my audience maybe is not a good target for that
Hmm.
application. And I have another one that it is cool, but maybe I mean it. I don't think will be a. I mean, downloaded millions. Who knows? But
Hmm.
it is mostly close to my audience. With I mean, it's a developer tool. So
Hmm.
I think that's a good point. I mean, you don't have a reputation of I don't know. You make an app for cooking, right? So maybe your audience is not looking you for cooking; it's looking you for your videos, your for iOS stuff. So yeah, definitely
Yeah,
something
once again,
to think
find
about.
your strength and use it to your advantage. And
Yeah.
for both of us, we already have, might it not be the biggest, but we already have a following of iOS developers. So if we are going to work on an app, and if we're going to be serious about that app, it might as well be for our existing following. That's going to make it so much easier down the road.
Mhm.
And then also another thing, where when talking about marketing, is App Store optimization, right? And we are in the very lucky position of having one single point of where users look for apps. So on Android, there are dozens of different app marketplaces, and they also download apps from the web. On
Mhm.
Windows, I think that's the worst one to be at, to develop software for Windows. I think that's the hardest one to get users. For macOS, it's already a bit harder than for iOS, because there people also download apps from the web. But on
Mhm.
iOS, every single user, now perhaps it might change in the EU in the coming years, but um, pretty much every single user, if they're looking for an app, they're gonna search for some similar relating term in the App Store. So that should be your first point of marketing, to make sure that you nail your app name, that you nail your keywords, your description, your screenshots, stuff like that. So I think from ASO alone, you can already have a very big user base if you do it correctly. And of course, if your niche isn't saturated already, if there's already a billion a billion apps doing the exact same thing as you, but in a tiny different way, maybe not as modern or not as personal, or doesn't have feature X, then it's very hard to rely on ASO. And then you probably have to have a different marketing strategy. But I think for development tools, for example, I think ASO is a good starting point.
Makes sense. Yeah, and thanks for all those tips. I think I mean we can share even more later. I mean, how long have you been working on this project, by the way?
I'm actually not quite sure. I thought about it earlier. I think it's been about 2.5 years now. So I
That's a
think it's
lot.
been half a year only macOS, and then I did the iOS version. A year later, I rewrote the iOS version and did the iPadOS version. I think that was the time frame. But it's been quite a while. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I mean, congrats. I mean, in your opinion, how many developers or people had downloaded your app?
I don't know out of the top of my head, but it's somewhere above 20,000, I believe. So it's not a giant number, but
Mhm.
this is just one of my many side projects that I do
Yeah,
for fun.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's steadily, slowly growing, and eventually it might make a significant amount of money. Right now, it's just a side project. And
Mhm.
of course, if you were to pour your heart and soul into it and go full time, then you could scale it much quicker. But if you only invest an hour or two per week, then of course you're gonna have slow growth no matter what's your marketing channel, no matter what's your app idea. It's gonna be like proportional to the time that you invest. But I'm very happy with LaunchBuddy's development, and I'm currently I've been on a break from it for a few months now, where I worked on an app during summer, and I'm now working on my first build in private, actually, where I'm not telling people about it, that I'm hopefully going to launch in December. And that's why I haven't been working on LaunchBuddy in the past few months a lot. But now I'm getting back into it, and I'm actually very, very exciting to do some marketing for it as well. So just yesterday, I started my first App Store optimization, like what is it called in App Store Connect? You have this option to A/B test different screenshots. I did that
Okay.
for the first time yesterday. And I'm also, before we started recording, I told you that I still have my video editor open. And that's actually not for a YouTube video, but because I did an app preview for LaunchBuddy. So for the longest time, I haven't had that.
Oh,
And
okay.
now I'm trying to increase my conversion rate because I do have quite a good number of impressions, but not a good conversion rate. And so I'm thinking about how to do that. And there's always these small things that you can always do in order to market your app, grow your app. And in my opinion, the most important thing is to always have fun while doing it.
Exactly. Learn to enjoy the process.
Yes, definitely. And pick a hobby, pick an idea that you love to do. Because I don't want LaunchBuddy to turn into another job. I don't want this to turn into I have to do 5 bug fixes today. I don't want that to happen. I want it to be fun. Otherwise, why do it myself, and why not work for a company?
Exactly. Wow, that's a really good one. Thank you, Flo. I think we have a lot to talk. I mean, we actually we jump more minutes than the expected time. But before closing the episode, I would like just to give you a couple of minutes. If you want to say something to the audience, any topic, any words you want to share, the microphone is yours.
you know, I always have most fun when I'm doing something new. I don't like to repeat myself too often. So I tried out different architectures. I tried out UIKit, but I also tried out SwiftUI. And it happens that I prefer SwiftUI over UIKit, even though I did UIKit first. I also tried out AppKit. I also tried out ARKit, RealityKit, all of these different frameworks. And so if I can say one thing to you listening or watching right now, it is to try something new. And that could be a new API. It could be trying to add a live activity to the app that you're working on. Could be supporting app intents. Could also be looking into a completely new architecture for your app. So personally, I'm currently not using MVVM, but I've used it in the past. I've also been looking at TCA and other different architectures. So try something new, try a new platform, just toggle that button in Xcode to run your app on macOS and see what happens. See if it works, see if you have to adapt something. And I always find learning the most fun. So that's what I would tell people to find a new API that was released last WWDC, or find a new framework and spend a few hours working with it. And if it's not fun, then drop it. That's no time wasted. You always learn something. But if it is fun, then perhaps you can start a new side project with that, or you can use the learnings in your work life. And there's always something to be learned, and so start something new.
Thank you. Thank you, Flo, for that tip and all the tips that you shared with us during this episode. I think you need to come back later for talking more about. We
Sure,
didn't
of
talk about
course.
architectures and all stuff. So, but I mean, there are a lot of technologies that we can discuss together. So it has been a pleasure for me to having you in this episode, man. And well, I definitely realize that you are a guy that have a lot of things going on, but at the same time you're well organized, to move forward with all the stuff. So I really appreciate your dedication, man. And well, definitely will learn. I'm learning from what you're doing too. So you are one of the persons that inspire me to move forward and do things better. So yeah, thank you.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much for saying that, and thanks for having me. It was actually my first podcast recording ever, so one more for do new stuff, I guess.
Oh,
And
excellent,
it was a
excellent.
lot of
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pleasure then. So yeah, being the first one right here in Swift and Tip podcast. By the way,
Yeah.
we will leave all your contact information, social media in the description below. But what is your main source of communication?
If you want to learn about iOS stuff, then go to YouTube. And if you want to learn about my indie projects and being an indie developer, go to Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to stay with Twitter for now, and see you there.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Hope you enjoy this conversation flow. So, and for all the people listening or watching this episode, remember my social media is also in the description. There are more content, more episodes from Swift and Tip podcast that we have recorded this year. There are great guests that have a conversation with me about many topics. So, well, I think we had a really interesting year. So 2024. So, and yeah, let's see how 2025 will go. So, well, that's it for now. So, thanks again, Flo, for having this time with me, and thanks everyone for listening. Remember, you can listen and watch this on YouTube, but also you have also the content available in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That's all for me. So, thank you so much, and have a great day.